The following podcast is a production of the Podpire Network. Find and listen to our podcasts at thepodpirenetwork.com or wherever you enjoy your podcast. The Podpire Network, a family of inspired podcasts.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Enabling Motion, the podcast where we bring you the inspiring technology that keeps people moving. So today I'm talking about the DARPA Luke arm, one of the most advanced bionic arms in the world.
Thanks, Sibel. Marc here. Today I'm going to be talking about artificial skin that can sense pressure, temperature, and even humidity.
Hi, and I'm Owen. In honor of this podcast recording being coast to coast with Marc recording from BC and myself recording from Nova Scotia, I thought I'd go across the better ocean to London, England, and talk about an extra thumb for your hands that's controlled with your feet.
Awesome. All right, so this episode is going to be a little more educational, and we talk about a lot of different technologies on this podcast. Some of them are past approval and being used with patients already. Some are technologies being developed in labs that won't be applied in devices for years, perhaps decades. We wanted to explain that while the term R&D, research and development, are often used together, they actually represent a spectrum of stages and timelines that lead to devices and treatments for people to benefit from. At the beginning end is research, starting with trial and error lab experiments to see if there's something to be found. On the far end of development are devices that use existing technologies that were previously researched and developed to deliver a reliable device to market. Of course, there are important steps in between, like the process of innovation and brainstorming that's the very heart of invention. We're not experts, but we wanted to share this today to explain why we talk about a variety of technologies and to hopefully educate some of our listeners on the wide range of activities that lead to the amazing world we live in. I'll be touching on the development end, Marc's talking a little bit more about a research end, and Owen's bringing the innovative process to us today. We're going to a quick ad break, and we'll be right back. All right, so my topic today is a good example of the development end of the R&D spectrum. So here's the story. This project's really near and dear to my heart. It's actually what inspired me to study biomedical engineering. And in fact, I was lucky enough to intern on it in 2012, thanks in large part to a friend from GW. Huge shout out to Thomas. While I learned about it through a TED Talk in 2007 by Dean Kamen, who developed it at a company called DECA, it was actually launched in 2006 by DARPA, a US government agency that funds cutting-edge technologies, playing a pivotal role in the development of the internet, GPS, voice recognition software, legged robots, autonomous cars. It's pretty much been an organization that's helped bring science fiction into current reality. So DARPA hired DECA and put forward an ambitious goal: the creation of an upper limb device that can replace a missing shoulder with near natural control, returning independence and quality of life to amputees. In the TED Talk, Dean Kamen communicates how monumental a task this is. Over time, the project worked with the US Veterans Affairs and their research projects as well. The device was developed alongside amputees. After starting in 2006, it was in 2014 that they received FDA approval, which is a huge milestone. From there, they launched a new company in 2016 called Mobius Bionics, which is where the Luke arm is currently housed.
So I've heard you mention the Luke arm before. Could you tell me about how it got its name?
Sure. So it's a nerd's dream project. It was literally named after Luke Skywalker from Star Wars. And when I actually started interning on it, I had not watched Star Wars, and the engineers I was working under were absolutely furious. So I was forced to watch Star Wars in the first week. And they were really inspired by it, and it's really something awesome. So let's talk about the Luke arm itself. Like most bionic devices, it's a robotic system that's tailored to interact with a human body. And it's got a real cyberpunk aesthetic. There's an overall cylindrical shape to it, with a large round extrusion at the shoulder, a hinge joint at the elbow, and the hand is translucent. It's a flexible rubbery material that makes up the skin. And you can actually see some of the componentry below, which I think is super cool. It's a decidedly sci-fi look. So here's some quick basics. It has 3 configurations for different levels of amputation. So that means below the elbow, above the elbow, and it's one of the only ones that can even replace a missing shoulder. And it weighs the same as the average human arm. It has 10 powered joints in the powered shoulder model and 5 grip patterns to grasp varying objects. It can be controlled with a variety of inputs, like muscle signals through surface EMG, which we've talked a little bit about before, and then pressure switches and others. And Mobius Bionics has actually developed this unique control system called IMUs, inertial measurement units. Think of like a Nintendo Wii controller, but much, much smaller. They're worn on the shoes, and by moving your feet, users can control the arm quite accurately. Some other unique things about the Luke arm are that it's the only powered shoulder device that's commercially available, which was actually a very interesting comment I saw on a YouTube review of the Winter Soldier for Marvel, who's the character who has a bionic arm, if anyone remembers that. It has powered upper arm rotation. The wrist is capable of rotation around the axis and tilting the hand either left or right. For our medical pros out there, the technical terms are pronation, supination. It has wrist flexion and extension, and a combined ulnar and radial deviation. And there's also grip force feedback, which is really unique.
Sibel, you'd mentioned another kind of movement to me earlier, one that actually might surprise people. You remember what that was?
Oh yeah. So it's really interesting. The fact that you can reach out, I've seen people do this with the shoulder model. So you imagine someone who's missing their shoulder, and they're able to grasp something that is above their head safely. And imagine they're grabbing, say, a bottle of Coke, and they bring it to their mouth safely and then drinking it. That's really crazy because this is a robotic device that is safely able to interact with something as sensitive and fragile as your mouth and your face without causing any damage. And there are videos out there of patients with shoulders feeding themselves cereal, moving eggs, grasping grapes, doing all sorts of these delicate activities. And it's really something that's absolutely amazing. Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that, Marc.
Definitely. So, Sibel, you also had talked about how the Luke arm is part of the development stage. Would you elaborate just a little bit on that?
Sure. So, of course, I'm a non-expert engineering graduate, and I'll give you the best understanding I have, which is that it's a device that is utilizing components that have already been completely developed on their own. So we're talking about motors and sensors, which are standardized and being produced by other companies. You're putting them together in such a fashion that you can reliably produce that and ship it out to market. And so you're not trying to create a fundamental piece of technology, but instead you're putting together pieces of technology to produce a final device.
Right. So, within the spectrum of research and development, this next piece of tech that I'm going to share showcases the beginning stages of creating a component that can then be implemented later down the line. So, without waiting any longer, let's talk about skin. Humans have a lot of it. It's not often recognized, but our skin is actually classified as an organ and is in fact our largest. Skin and its associated structures like hair, nails, sweat glands, they make up what is called the integumentary system. The major roles of this system include protecting us against dangerous chemicals and bacteria, as well as assisting in our temperature regulation via sweat production. Our skin also houses many types of sensory cells that provide us with information of temperature, pressure, vibration, and tissue damage. As far as prosthetic limbs go, the need for protection and temperature regulation isn't as important, but what is important is a sense of touch. Now, we've already talked about the importance of sensory feedback in prosthetics information from our muscles that let us know where our limbs are in space, and signals from our skin to help us better interact with objects. Now, Sibel, you played around with the Luke arm. What was that like using a device that didn't have any innate proprioception?
So while I saw some, veterans who had used the arm for a long time be able to do it without looking, I absolutely had to pay really close attention, constantly looking at the hand to keep an eye to figure out what was going on.
Right.
It a completely different experience.
And
Absolutely,
keeping your eyes on it all the time.
absolutely,
It's
absolutely.
hard.
Hmm.
So, on our mission to create the most realistic prosthetic limbs, having a way to provide these senses is currently one of the challenges at the forefront of the field. This is where today's piece of tech comes in. Coming out of the Graz University in Austria, researchers have developed artificial skin that can sense temperature, pressure, and even humidity. Now, it's important to note that humans do not possess specific receptors to sense humidity. So, this is like an added spidey sense or something. Certain insects have cells that are called hygroreceptors, which enables this ability, but in humans, it's likely that a combination of temperature and pressure sensation allows us to perceive humidity or wetness. But back to the skin, the artificial skin is very sensitive. It contains 2,000 sensors per square millimeter. The sensors rely on a hydrogel core, a substance that will expand or contract with changes in moisture and temperature. The hydrogel is then encased in a zinc oxide shell. The shell is a piezoelectric material, which means it will generate a current when force is applied to it. So when the hydrogel changes shape, or when external forces are applied to the sensor, current is generated within the shell. So now we have three types of stimuli that we can generate a current in the shell with, but how does the system differentiate between these three categories of stimuli? By having sensors with and without a hydrogel core under the piezoelectric shell, the signal types can be separated between external force and internal pressure. With good software, the researchers theorized that it would be possible to discern between temperature and humidity changes as well. A marvel of this tech is that it can detect objects up to 1,000 times smaller than our own sense of touch. And this artificial skin can be made to be 4 times thinner than human skin. I think this will be a very, very cool piece of tech to see implemented into prosthetics, and I'm super excited to follow the progress. Now, Owen will hit us with an extra digit right after this ad break.
Hi, welcome back from the break. Now, you might have noticed that we didn't tell you that we're saving up for anything this time. That's because we want you to make up your own. Try it now! Opposable thumbs. It's one of the traits that differentiate humans from most other creatures on the planet, giving our hands endless utility. Is there anything that we could add to make our hands better? Today I'm talking about Danny Clode's Third Thumb project, which started as an art project out of the Royal College of Art in London and is now being used to study neural plasticity to improve the usability and control of prosthetic devices. In addition to that, I'll be talking a bit about the design thinking phases when creating a product. So, different people will tell you that there are a different number of stages to the design thinking process. The simplest form comes in 3 stages: the define, ideate, and prototype. For Danny Clode, she wanted to reframe people's thinking when it comes to prosthetics. The original definition of the word prosthetic is to add to, and she wanted to create something to add to the human body. The third thumb is a wearable hand augmentation that sits next to the pinky finger opposite of your actual thumb. It looks and acts like a thumb and is controlled through pressure sensors worn under each big toe and it's transmitted through Bluetooth to the third thumb prosthetic. People wearing the third thumb prosthetic have been able to do a lot of really interesting things with it, like being able to juggle, play the guitar with that extra thumb. And it's really very intuitive, which you might not think about coming from, thinking that you're controlling this thumb with your feet. But people very quickly got to learn how to use it, working with it. And that really interested a group of researchers at the Plasticity Lab. More recently, in collaboration with the Plasticity Lab in the Institute of Cognitive Neuroscience at the University College of London, they have begun a neuroscientific study into the neural correlates of hand augmentation, and they believe that by studying this and the boundaries of neuroplasticity, that this information can be used to improve the usability and control of prosthetics devices. It's an amazing example of how innovation feeds the R&D process.
And it seems like, Danny Claude, when she finished her third thumb project, she basically, what we might have called in engineering, produced a proof of concept in a way, which is, which makes, it seems like how the art world and the engineering world overlap and then have now started moving into this really cool realm with the neuroplasticity. Is that
completely? Yes. Yeah. I think that is, we need, I think what engineering needs more of is honestly artists. We need more artists in this space because we learn a certain set of skills and we have a certain set of tools, and artists can come in with a wide variety of tools and skills. So
Agreed.
having
Hot
any
take.
chance.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Is that a
Agreed. Hot take. Hot take. All right. That was awesome. Favorite topics, guys, other than your own. Marc, choosing your favorite topic.
I would have to say it's tough. It's a tough one because
it is a tough one today.
Creativity and the art from the third thumb, I think, is so cool. But just based on technological advancement, I'm going to have to say the Luke arm there, because that is, that's the forefront of this field in controllable prosthetics, and I think it is extremely exciting to know that it exists even. So
it's something else. I cannot tell you how cool it is to see that thing in person. What about you, Owen? What you thinking?
Yeah, I think we're, we don't really need to hear what your favorite is, because my favorite was also the Luke arm. But obviously, I am personally interested in how you're going to pick the third thumb as your favorite.
Oh man, yeah, it is the third thumb. You're right.
Yeah.
I love the idea of the third thumb. I think it's so cool. I just love that idea of saying, hey, what more could we add on in terms of functionality? So yeah, amazing topics today, guys. And I hope our listeners, you found this educational as to how there is a spectrum within the R&D process, and how there is the absolute need for brainstorming to actually feed into it so it actually does something. And thank you so much for listening. Please message us on Instagram at Enabling Motion Pod if you have any thoughts or topics you'd like us to cover. Listen to us everywhere podcasts are found. And thank you to the Podpire Network for supporting us. We'll be back in 2 weeks and look forward to talking to you again. Take care.